In the mid to late 1800s, refrigeration made the transportation of goods across the United States far easier. This helped propel the lobster from a prisoner's meal to an example of fine dining. And of course, it isn't hard to see why. Lobster with just melted butter, by all means, is a great meal, and it stands up there with the likes of filet mignon. But as much as people like lobster, one has to wonder, what happens when someone likes lobster just a little bit too much? Well, of course, the answer to that can be found in the emails of the early 2000s, especially the chainmail, known simply as Susie Delucci and the Miracle of Life, or better known just as lobster sex. And in this inaugural episode of Tyler Talks, that's what we're going to be going over. So, we are here in the year 2000. You've just watched one of the debates between Al Gore and George W. Bush, and you've also slurped down some Yummers Pepsi Blue. Of course, now you've made the important decision that it's time to check your emails before bed. And moving through the spam and junk mail, you come across what will soon be known as a piece of chainmail history. Opening it, you are horrified at the story, which goes a little like this. One morning, around 5 a.m., 22-year-old Susan Delucci of Kittery, Maine woke up with a painful need to urinate. First, she just thought this was diarrhea. But soon after getting out of bed, she realized that this was in fact urinary pain. It was very similar to the feeling of having diarrhea, of course, just out of the wrong hole. Heading to the toilet and sitting on it, she soon erupted into the most horrific, messy, farting noise that anyone had ever heard. In paralyzing pain, Miss Delucci, for the next few minutes, continued to push and squirt out of herself a burning tide of wretched filth while she gripped the sides of her toilet, white-knuckled. She was screaming wildly, and by the time the neighbors called the police, when the medics arrived, it was too late. Miss Delucci was found lying unconscious on the floor of her bathroom, wearing nothing but her bathrobe. Running down her leg, though, was a stream of sticky brown and green syrup. The medic had to transfer her to a stretcher, so he grabbed her left leg, which was bent crossing over the right leg, similar to a Family Guy death pose, of course, to straighten her out. She was lying there all twisted up, of course. When he lifted her leg to straighten her body up, a creature no larger than the tip of my finger wormed its way out and landed on the floor with a wet plopping sound. Shocked, the medic stared at this creature that was on the floor in a casing of mucus. It was a tiny mud shrimp. And it sat there on the cold tile, gasping for water. This medic was horrified at what he just saw. So, feeling nauseous, he heads to the toilet to throw up, but what he saw would horrify him. And to this day, he convulses every time he sees a toilet bowl. In this toilet bowl were mud shrimp, just all over the toilet bowl, flapping their tails. Truly a horrible sight. But if you think that was bad, just wait until you hear how it happened. Miss Delucci's official death was a result of a combination of shock and severe head trauma. Standing up over the toilet in pain, when she saw what she had done, she went into shock and fell, smashing her head on the toilet and then bathroom floor. It's believed by medical personnel, however, that on 2 nights before the accident, she purchased a lobster at a fish market. While lying in a tub she gently inserted the creature's tail into herself to derive some pleasure. Holding a lighter under the creature's face, it caused the lobster to flip its tail in a violent snapping motion. The medics also found a lesbian XXX video, the VCR that the TV was positioned by, which was on a table next to the bathtub. The lobster was found in the kitchen garbage with remnants of lighter fluid around its face where it was burned. The lobster also was found to have traces of Mrs. DeLucci's DNA on it, as well as pubic hairs that wedged themselves between the lobster's tail joints. Also, the lobster's digestive tract and colon were filled with mud shrimp egg casings. Doctors believe the lobster had ate the mud shrimp, as this is common in fish markets, allegedly. They're used to be food for lobsters. And the shrimp just went through the lobster into Miss DeLucci. Main mud shrimp only take 2 days to gestate, and Miss DeLucci was only 4 days away from her period. Doctors believe that at the point of her menstrual cycle, her womb would be the perfect pH balance to grow these mud shrimp, which of course are a larger version of the sea monkey pet that is very common throughout the United States. Overnight, these eggs hatched and the mud shrimp began doubling in size every 10 minutes. You can imagine the pain Miss DeLucci was in when she gave birth to well over 1,000 mud shrimp in her toilet. Sure. Ew. After reading such a gross tale and hearing it, you have to wonder, could this really happen to someone? I mean, could it? I'll let us all, as a group, think about this for a second. No, this has the basic stereotypes of a popular chain email from the 2000s. If you guys would like, we could go over them all together. Would you guys like to do that? Okay, we will. Just this once, we will. Let's see. To start, we can check off gross, intimate acts with an animal. We can cross off impregnation by said animal. We can cross that off too. We could, at the same time, we can also cross off yucky acts involving genitalia. We could cross off grammatical errors, because after all, Miss DeLucci is spelled 3 different times throughout this email. We could cross off, while we're at it, death of the main character as a punishment for the yucky acts they committed. So of course, Miss DeLucci died from shock. But, of course, that doesn't mean it's not true. After all, it could just be a coincidence that it had all of these similar archetypes to other chain emails from the time. But if we look at the mud shrimp, we can even see further that, it just isn't true. Mud shrimp typically are found in the Canadian Bay of Fundy and are food for sandpipers, which are a seabird. A very nice seabird to add. And they just aren't found in anywhere near lobsters. Well, lobsters in fish markets. They aren't used as food for lobsters in fish markets, to be more exact. So there really isn't a way for the mud shrimp to enter the lobster to then somehow survive the digestion, because of course they gotta go through stomach acid. But it could happen, okay? I'll say that. It could happen. So let's assume for a second. Somehow these mud shrimp somehow make it into the lobster, through the digestion tract, and into Miss DeLucci. Could they hatch up there? Well, I'm sorry to say, my friends, but no. Couldn't. For starters, mud shrimp need three main things to hatch. They need extremely salty water, they need a whole lot of light, and they need a whole lot of aeration, which is basically bubbles bringing oxygen to the eggs to help them hatch. Now, I'm not a gynecologist of any sort, so I might be wrong about this, but that doesn't sound like a vagina. I could be wrong, but I don't think that they're typically extremely salty, full of light, and extremely bubbly. But what do I know? I mean, also, the fact that the paramedics somehow had omnipotence to know that Miss Galushi had extremely yuckers farting noises could also be a part as to why I don't think this story is true. The fact that they somehow figured that out even though no one was home, that could be why too. But, okay, we know this story isn't true. Okay. When did it come into existence? Well, the hard part is, like most chain emails, the original author, unless they come out and admit that they wrote this email, they're virtually extremely hard to find. Because once they post it, it gets hidden under thousands upon thousands of reposts and it being shared across forums and pages, just across the internet. The original author just, I don't think we'll ever be able to find. However, we can get an estimate as to when it was written. The two earliest articles I could find involving lobster sex were both written about the same time, one from About.com's Urban Legend page, and the other from Snopes, both written in the end of January 2000. So, if I had to put my thinking cap on, I would assume that this chainmail was written near the end of 1999, gaining traction throughout the year until it eventually gained enough prominence to be picked up by these two sources on internet urban legends and myths. And it isn't hard to see why it gained such attraction. I mean, after all, yucky stories involving people's genitalia and horrifying sex acts is something that is extremely popular with middle schoolers after, of course, playing Halo 2 and staying up past their bedtime with their friends. So it isn't hard to see how it spread so fast and how it became a piece of chainmail history. But with that, I got nothing left for you guys, so I'll see you guys next time. So